or afternoon year 8, depending on when you are doing this lesson. And today we're going to be focusing on having a look at ecotourism in the Gambia. We're going to have a look at a specific country to start, to have a look at some of the issues associated with it before I'm going to get you to be a little bit creative. And you are going to think about how and what you would want to include in an eco-tourist resort. To start with, a reminder, as always, in the top right, you've got your indication of how long each slide should take, and I will talk you through what you've got to do. So write down today's title and today's date, and then let's get started with the first activity. So to start with, before we have a look at any country, it's always worthwhile locating where it is. So your first task is to locate where the Gambia is. You will see to your on the left of the screen in front of you, you have got a location map of it in the continent that you will find it, as well as a smaller map where you can see some of the features of the country. Once you've done that, I want you to think about this question. Suggest why the climate of the Gambia is so well suited to tourism. You will see you've got a climate graph underneath the yellow box. Remember, when you're having a look at climate graphs, what you are looking at. The red line is your temperature, and it's in degrees Celsius, and the blue bars represent rainfall. I want you to think about when the Gambia may be the most popular tourist, or when tourists are most often going to the Gambia, what time of year, and why that graph could help suggest why tourism is, why tourists like to go there, if I'm honest with you. What about the Gambia draws them in? You've got 8 minutes in total to complete both of these tasks. Press pause now and continue when you have finished your tasks. So hopefully you found that we're talking about a country that's roughly on or near the equator. It's a hot part of the world, and you will find that it has a very, very warm and dry winter season. This is a time when the people of the UK particularly, and people in Northern Europe, like to travel there for their holidays. It's a destination that's been popular for a number of years. But we've got to think about, with that, what is good and what is bad about it. And to start with, you're going to have a look at the conflicts of tourism that exist in this country. I would like you to read through the list of conflicts that can exist because of tourism in the Gambia. In your opinion, which of these are the top 5 most important conflicts? Write them down and explain why you think these are issues for the people of the Gambia and what problems these could bring when it comes to thinking of tourism. I've asked you to write down 5, but if you find that towards the end of this 8 minutes you've only written down 3 or 4, so be it. Make sure that you are working efficiently in order to get as much done as possible. Press pause now and press play when you're ready to continue. So you can see, can't you, that there are a number of different conflicts that exist in tourism. Whether it's because people go to a destination and don't leave the hotel, so therefore don't spend their money elsewhere, or whether or not it's the fact that the culture of the tourists and the local people is in direct conflict, or whether or not the amount of money that people are earning isn't very much because most of it goes out of the country as something called leakage. It's also important to think about water, electricity, power, pollution that could be brought in by the tourists. All of these things you've got to think about when we're thinking about ecotourism, this idea of it being sustainable. How can we get over these problems and what can be done in order to resolve them? We're going to think about what we could do now as you move on to the next slide. So your main task for the lesson, and I've booked out around 40 minutes for you to do so, is to design your own eco-resort. I would like you to think about an area in the Gambia where you would like to open an eco-tourism resort. Is it inland, on the river? Is it by the coast? You're going to describe what your resort will be like, what you'd have there, why these features of your eco-resort are going to be sustainable, maybe thinking about the things that you have added before. You're going to add a drawing to show what it would look like, and I want you to label and annotate or explain this diagram about what makes this specific feature sustainable. It's a maximum of 2 A4 sides. I'm going to ask you to submit this to your teacher next week because I would like to see some of the work that you have completed, and they will then give you some feedback on it. I'd like you to do this, please, on a separate piece of paper if you can, and on the computer where possible. If you can't, you can then take a picture or can scan it in, because I'd like to see if I can keep some of these for some display work, the ones that look the most colourful and the ones that are most well thought through. As I said, take round about 40 minutes doing this. At the end of this PowerPoint, you will find a number of slides with some suggestions about features of sustainable resorts, eco-resorts. Read through those to see if you can add them in if you need any inspiration. So to recap, you're going to design your own eco-resort, a maximum of 2 A4 slides. You can, and I suggest you type it up. You need to have a drawing, at least one, with an annotated sketch of what is sustainable about what you have drawn. And I want you to think about why, explaining why. I would suggest you should have a minimum of 4 to 5 different aspects of your resort, but you can add more in if you want. If you have any questions about this, please do ask, either email me or your teacher, and you'll be asked to submit this at some point next week, depending on your teacher's schedule. There's one more task to do in today's lesson, so after you spent 40 minutes doing this, please move on. So the last task I want you to do is a bit of a summary. In your books, I'd like you to write down a bullet point list of the top 5 rules that you would suggest for building and developing an eco-tourist resort. These would be short, sharp points for you to go back and think, yep, this is what would make the area sustainable. And that's the end of today's lesson. I look forward to receiving your submitted work. I look forward to seeing what you think will be important in your eco-tourist resort. I'll see you next time.